The recruitment center on Mars station buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy lined up for military screening. Martinez stood quietly in line, her small frame dwarfed by the towering beside her. At barely 5 feet tall, she looked more like a lost civilian than a potential soldier. Her right eye was covered by a simple black patch, the result of a mining accident on Earth's Luna colony 3 years ago. "Next," barked Sergeant Vex, a hulking with 4 arms and scales that gleamed under the artificial lights. His voice carried the authority of someone who had seen 1,000 recruits come and go. Stepped forward, her boots making barely a sound on the metal floor. The sergeant looked down at her, his expression shifting from professional indifference to barely concealed amusement. "Human," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "You sure you're in the right place? The civilian transport leaves in an hour." "I'm here to enlist, sir," replied, her voice steady despite the snickers from other recruits behind her. Sergeant Vex picked up her file, scanning it with all 4 eyes. "Martinez, age 24, previous experience, mining equipment operator." He looked up again, his mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among his species. "And you think this qualifies you for military service?" "I believe I can contribute, sir." A recruit nearby, his crystalline skin shimmering with natural bioluminescence, leaned toward his companion. "Look at the little human with 1 eye. What's she going to do, trip over her own feet and accidentally shoot someone?" The comment drew chuckles from several other aliens in line, kept her gaze fixed on the sergeant, ignoring the mockery. "Tell me, human," Sergeant Vex continued, clearly enjoying the entertainment, "what makes you think the Galactic Defense Force needs someone who can't even keep both eyes intact?" His jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained calm. "Respectfully, sir, depth perception isn't everything. I've been shooting since I was 12. My father taught me to hunt in Earth's wilderness before the colonies expanded." "Hunting Earth rabbits isn't quite the same as facing void wraiths in combat," the sergeant replied, making a note in her file. "But regulations state I have to process every application." He stamped her papers with unnecessary force. "Report to Basic Training Facility 7 tomorrow at 600. Try not to get lost with that limited vision of yours." As walked away, she heard this voice carry across the room. 20 credits says she washes out in the first week. Humans are soft, and damaged humans are worse." "You're on," replied another voice, "though I give her 3 days tops." Pretended not to hear as she collected her assigned gear from the quartermaster. The equipment felt familiar in her hands. Standard pulse rifle, tactical vest, communication device. She had handled similar tools during her mining days, though those were designed for breaking rocks, not enemies. That evening, she found herself in the assigned barracks with 30 other recruits from various species. The sleeping quarters were designed to accommodate different physiologies: heated areas for the cold-blooded saurians, atmospheric regulators for the methane breathing, and standard Earth-normal zones for humans and similar species. Chose a bunk in the corner, away from the main social clusters that were already forming. She was used to solitude. The Luna mining colonies taught you to be self-sufficient, especially when you were one of only a dozen humans among hundreds of alien workers. As she organized her few personal belongings, she noticed a small group gathered around the bunk area. The from earlier, who she learned was called Zephyr, was holding court with several other recruits. "The human military has a saying," Zephyr was explaining to his audience. "They call it cannon fodder. That's what humans are good for, absorbing enemy fire so the real soldiers can advance." A female nodded her massive head. "My instructor at the academy said humans were only accepted into the GDF because of political pressure. Something about species diversity and equal representation." "Makes sense," added a with 6 legs and venomous spines along his back. "They're physically inferior to most species they have limited, and their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly contribute?" Listened while checking her equipment. She had heard variations of these conversations her entire life. Humans were newcomers to galactic society, having only made contact 40 years ago. Most species viewed them as primitive, weak, and largely irrelevant. The lights dimmed automatically to signal sleep cycle, but remained awake, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would begin 8 weeks of basic training, followed by specialization assignments. She knew exactly what she wanted to do, but convincing the instructors would be the challenge. The next morning arrived with the harsh blare of wake-up alarms. was already dressed and ready, having woken an hour early out of habit. Around her, other recruits stumbled through their morning routines, some requiring special atmospheric adjustments or dietary supplements. Training instructor strode into the barracks at precisely 600. He was a draconian, standing nearly 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and wings that could propel him at supersonic speeds. His reputation preceded him, a veteran of the Void War who had trained elite units for the past 15 years. "Welcome to basic training," he announced, his voice carrying easily through the large space. "For the next 8 weeks, I will determine whether you have what it takes to serve in the Galactic Defense Force. Most of you will fail. Some of you will quit. A few of you might actually become soldiers." His burning orange eyes swept across the assembled recruits, pausing briefly on before moving on. "We begin with physical conditioning. Follow me." The training facility was massive, with obstacle courses designed for multiple species, firing ranges with various weapon systems, and simulation chambers that could recreate any environment in the galaxy. Had studied the layout the night before, memorizing every detail she could access through the base's information network. The first test was a basic obstacle course, climbing walls, crawling under barriers, jumping over gaps, and navigating through a maze. Most recruits completed it easily, their natural abilities allowing them to overcome the challenges with minimal effort. They simply smashed through barriers, the winged species flew over obstacles, and those with multiple limbs through sections designed to test agility. Approached each obstacle methodically, using technique rather than raw ability. She calculated angles, conserved energy, and found efficient paths through each section. While others finished faster, she completed the course without error and well within the time limit. "Adequate," instructor noted, making marks on his tablet. Next, weapons familiarity. The weapons range featured targets at various distances and movement patterns. Recruits were issued standard pulse rifles and given basic instruction on operation and safety. Listened carefully to the technical specifications, noting the differences between this military-grade weapon and the industrial tools she was familiar with. When her turn came, she stepped up to the firing line. Around her, other recruits had achieved mixed results. Some species had natural advantages, enhanced vision, multiple arms for stability, or innate spatial awareness. Others struggled with weapons designed primarily for bipedal users. Raised the rifle, closed her left eye, and acquired the first target. The weapon's weight distribution was different from what she was used to, but the fundamentals remained the same. She controlled her breathing, squeezed the trigger smoothly, and watched the energy bolt strike center mass on the target. She continued methodically through the sequence, hitting each target with precision. Her scores were solid, not the best in the group, but consistently accurate. She noticed instructor watching her technique more closely than he had with other recruits. "Interesting approach," he commented as she finished. "Very deliberate." "Thank you, sir." That wasn't necessarily a compliment. Deliberate can mean slow in combat situations. Nodded but didn't respond. She had learned long ago that arguing with instructors rarely proved productive. As the days progressed, the training intensified. Combat tactics, species psychology, emergency procedures, equipment maintenance, and countless other subjects filled their schedules from dawn until well past sunset. Approached each lesson with the same methodical attention she brought to everything else. Her fellow recruits continued their casual mockery, though it had evolved from outright derision to patronizing tolerance. They included her in group exercises when required, but made little effort to include her socially. "At least she tries hard," she heard one of them say during a break. "You have to respect the effort even if the results aren't there." The comment stung more than the open hostility had. Preferred honest dislike to condescending pity. 3 weeks into training, their specialization preferences were announced. Each recruit could request their desired assignment path: infantry, engineering, intelligence, logistics, medical, or specialist roles like pilot, explosives, or reconnaissance. Submitted her request without hesitation: sniper. The response came back within hours: request, recommended assignment, logistics. She requested a meeting with instructor, waiting outside his office for nearly an hour before he agreed to see her. "Recruit Martinez," he said, not looking up from his work as she entered. "I assume you want to discuss your assignment recommendation." Yes, sir, I believe there's been an error. No error. He finally looked at her, his reptilian features unreadable. Sniper positions require exceptional visual acuity, physical stability under extreme conditions, and the ability to make split-second calculations under pressure. Your profile suggests you're better suited for support roles. Kept her voice level. Sir, my marksmanship scores have been consistently high throughout training. On a controlled range with stationary targets, yes, combat sniping requires capabilities that your physical limitations make problematic. I request the opportunity to demonstrate otherwise, sir. Instructor leaned back in his chair, studying her. You're persistent, I'll give you that. Very well. There's an advanced marksmanship test scheduled for next week. Volunteer for it. If you can place in the top 10% of participants, I'll reconsider your assignment. Felt a surge of hope. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. The test is designed for specialists who've been training for years. You'll be competing against recruits who already proven themselves exceptional marksmen. Most human recruits don't even qualify to attempt it. That evening, researched everything she could find about the advanced marksmanship test. The information available was limited, but she learned it involved long-range shooting, moving targets, environmental variables, and time pressure. Participants needed to demonstrate not just accuracy, but adaptability and consistency under stress. She began arriving at the practice range an hour early each morning and staying late each evening. While other recruits socialized or rested, worked on her technique, studying wind patterns, light conditions, and the subtle variations in weapon performance. Word of her upcoming test attempt spread through the barracks. The one-eyed human thinks she can outshoot trained specialists, Zephyr announced to his usual audience. This should be entertaining. Maybe we should start a betting pool, suggested another recruit, though I'm not sure anyone would take odds on her succeeding. Blocked out the commentary, focusing on her preparation. She had spent her entire life being underestimated, and she had learned to use that to her advantage. People didn't take seriously what they didn't expect to succeed. The morning of the test arrived gray and cold. 12 recruits had qualified to attempt the advanced marksmanship trial, including several who were already being fast-tracked for sniper training. Was the only human in the group and the only one with a visible physical impairment. The testing facility was located on a natural plateau outside the main base, with targets positioned at ranges from 500 to 1,500 meters across varied terrain. Weather conditions were deliberately challenging. Wind gusts up to 30 kilometers per hour and intermittent cloud cover affecting light levels. Master Sergeant, a grizzled veteran from the avian species, briefed the participants. His feathers were from combat, and one wing showed evidence of significant battle damage that had healed imperfectly. This test will determine who among you has the potential for precision specialist training, he announced, his voice carrying clearly despite the wind. You will have 4 hours to complete 6 shooting scenarios of increasing difficulty. Scoring is based on accuracy, consistency, and time to target acquisition. Checked her assigned rifle, a long-range precision weapon with advanced targeting systems. The scope was more sophisticated than anything she had used before, but the basic principles remained familiar. The first scenario involved stationary targets at 600 meters. Found her position, adjusted for wind and elevation, and began engaging targets methodically. She focused on breathing control and trigger discipline, the lessons her father had taught her during their hunting trips years ago echoing in her mind. Her shots found their marks consistently, though not as quickly as some of the other participants. The recruit, Prism, completed the scenario in half the time required, his crystalline physiology allowing him to process visual data far more rapidly than most species. The second scenario added moving targets on predictable paths. Watched the patterns carefully, calculating intercept points and timing her shots accordingly. She began to find a rhythm, her single eye tracking targets with growing confidence. By the third scenario, multiple moving targets with random patterns, the field had narrowed considerably. 4 recruits had been eliminated for failing to meet minimum accuracy standards. Remained in contention, though her scores placed her in the bottom half of remaining participants. The fourth scenario introduced environmental variables, smoke screens, dust clouds, and shifting light conditions that simulated battlefield conditions. This was where mining experience proved valuable. She had worked in similar conditions for years, learning to operate equipment when visibility was limited and conditions were unpredictable. Her performance improved noticeably, moving her up in the rankings as other recruits struggled with the adverse conditions. She used sound, muzzle flash patterns, and brief visual windows to maintain target acquisition when direct sight was impossible. The fifth scenario was long-range precision, targets at maximum distance requiring exact calculations for bullet drop, wind deflection, and atmospheric conditions. Took her time with the mathematics, double-checking her calculations before each shot. Her accuracy was exceptional, landing several shots that drew appreciative nods from the observing instructors. When the scores were tallied after 5 scenarios, found herself in 6th place overall, well within the top 10% requirement for consideration. The final scenario would determine final rankings. Master Sergeant gathered the remaining 8 participants for the briefing. Your last test simulates a real combat situation. Intelligence indicates high-value targets in a defended position. You will have 20 minutes to identify and eliminate 3 specific targets while avoiding civilian markers and neutralizing any threats that detect your position. He gestured toward a complex terrain feature with multiple buildings, vegetation, and elevation changes. Your targets are designated Alpha, Beta, and Charlie. They will be positioned somewhere within that area and may move during the exercise. Missing a target or hitting a civilian marker results in immediate failure. Study the terrain carefully. The scenario was designed to test not just shooting ability, but tactical thinking, patience, and decision-making under pressure. She would need to find concealed positions, identify targets among decoys, and potentially engage multiple threats simultaneously. She moved into the terrain methodically, using natural cover and concealment to avoid detection sensors placed throughout the area. Her mining background had taught her to move through dangerous environments carefully, always aware of potential hazards and escape routes. From her first position, she identified what appeared to be Target Alpha through her scope. The figure matched the briefing description, but something felt wrong about the setup. Held her fire, continuing to observe and scan the area. Her patience was rewarded when the real Target Alpha emerged from a different position, revealing the first figure to be a decoy. She took the shot cleanly, the target indicator confirming a successful hit. Target Beta proved more elusive, requiring to relocate twice before finding an angle that offered a clear shot without exposing her position to nearby sensors. She eliminated the target with a single shot at nearly 1,200 meters. Target Charlie was positioned in the most challenging location, surrounded by civilian markers and protected by multiple sensors. Had to find a position that offered minimal exposure while allowing for a precise shot that wouldn't endanger any civilians. As she maneuvered for position, one of the sensors detected her movement. The scenario now included active threats searching for her location, adding time pressure to her final shot. Controlled her breathing, acquired the target, and squeezed the trigger just as a threat indicator appeared in her peripheral vision. The shot struck true, and she immediately displaced to avoid the responding threats, completing the scenario within the time limit. When the final scores were announced, had finished 4th overall, a result that exceeded even her own expectations. More importantly, it was well above the threshold required for sniper training consideration. Master Sergeant approached her as she cleaned her weapon. Impressive performance, recruit, particularly your patience and tactical thinking in the final scenario. Thank you, sir. I'm recommending you for advanced sniper training. There's a specialized program starting next month for exceptional candidates. It's intensive, 12 weeks of training that covers everything from extreme-range shooting to infiltration and reconnaissance. Felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine pride in her abilities. I won't disappoint you, sir. See that you don't. The program has a 70% failure rate, and it's designed for recruits who already proven themselves exceptional. You'll be competing against the best of the best from across the galaxy. As walked back toward the main base, she passed several of her fellow basic training recruits. Zephyr looked up from his conversation, his bioluminescent skin flickering with what might have been surprise or annoyance. Heard you passed some kind of test, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Advanced marksmanship assessment, replied simply. Lucky day, I suppose. Stopped walking and looked directly at him, Luck had nothing to do with it. For the first time since she'd arrived at the training facility, the usual mockery was absent from the faces around her. Not acceptance, not yet, but something closer to cautious respect. That evening, received official notification of her acceptance into the Advanced Sniper Training Program. She would transfer to a specialized facility on the Moon Titan VII, where she would train alongside candidates from elite military units across the galaxy. She packed her few belongings methodically, the same way she approached everything else. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new doubts to overcome, and new opportunities to prove that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest advantage of all. As she prepared for sleep, touched the patch covering her missing eye. The accident that had cost her depth perception had also taught her to see things differently, to rely on patience, calculation, and careful observation rather than quick reflexes and natural ability. In the morning, she would begin the next phase of her journey. But tonight, for T-Titan VII's surface stretched endlessly in every direction, a frozen wasteland where temperatures dropped to -200 degrees Celsius during the night cycle. The Advanced Sniper Training Facility was built into the Moon's largest mountain range, its corridors carved directly from the ice and rock. Had never seen a more intimidating place in her life. The transport shuttle's doors hissed open, releasing a cloud of heated air that instantly crystallized in the frigid atmosphere. Gathered her gear and stepped onto the landing platform, her breath visible even through the environmental suit's recycling system. Around her, 11 other recruits disembarked with the confident movements of proven soldiers. She recognized several species she had never encountered before, a with skin that shifted color based on mood, a whose entire body was covered in sensory tendrils, and a whose four arms moved independently as she unloaded her equipment. These weren't basic training recruits. These were specialists who had already distinguished themselves in their respective militaries. "Welcome to hell," said a voice behind her. Turned to see a human male, roughly her age, with the bearing of someone who had seen actual combat. "Names, formerly of Earth's Special Forces. You're Martinez, right? Word about your marksmanship test performance made it here ahead of you." Nodded, surprised to meet another human. Didn't expect to see anyone else from Earth here. "There are 3 of us in this cycle. Me, you, and Sarah from the Lunar Defense Corps. We're probably the first humans to make it into this program." Shouldered his gear bag with practiced ease. "Fair warning, most of the other recruits have been training for this their entire lives. We're going to have to work twice as hard to keep up." The orientation briefing was held in a circular chamber carved from black ice that seemed to absorb light. Instructor Prime stood at the center, her reptilian form commanding attention from every recruit in the room. She was draconian, like Instructor, but her scales showed the white scarring of someone who had survived multiple combat encounters. "You 12 represent the finest marksmen from across the galaxy," began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "You are here because you have demonstrated exceptional accuracy, tactical thinking, and mental discipline. Over the next 12 weeks, we will determine which of you have the potential to become true precision specialists." She gestured to holographic displays that appeared around the room, showing various combat scenarios and weapon systems. "This is not target shooting. This is not competition marksmanship. This is combat sniping, the art of eliminating specific threats from extreme range while remaining undetected by enemy forces." Studied the scenarios carefully. Urban environments, jungle warfare, space station operations, asteroid mining facilities, the variety was staggering. Each environment would require different approaches, different equipment, different tactical considerations. "Your first assignment is survival training," continued. "You will be dropped individually in different sections of Titan VII's surface with minimal equipment. Your objective is to survive for 72 hours while completing specific reconnaissance missions. Those who fail to return or fail their missions will be dismissed from the program." A recruit raised his hand. "Instructor, what about species with specific environmental requirements? The surface atmosphere is toxic to several of us." "Emergency life support is provided for critical biological needs only. Everything else is your responsibility to overcome." The expression showed no sympathy. "Enemy forces will not accommodate your species' preferences." That evening, studied the survival manual and equipment specifications. Each recruit would receive basic cold weather gear, emergency rations for 24 hours, a basic communication device, and a multi-tool. Everything else would need to be improvised or done without. Sarah found her in the study area, spreading technical manuals across one of the tables. Sarah had the lean build and alert eyes of someone with combat experience. "You ever done Arctic survival before?" Sarah asked, settling into a nearby chair. "Luna Colony had some harsh conditions, but nothing like this," replied. "You." "Antarctica training during my Special Forces qualification. It's all about conserving energy and staying dry. The cold will kill you faster than any enemy." Sarah pointed to the environmental data displayed on his tablet. "The real challenge isn't going to be survival, it's completing mission objectives while dealing with the physical stress." Nodded, making notes about energy conservation techniques. She had learned during her mining days that efficiency was everything when working in hostile environments. The lessons from those industrial accidents and equipment failures might prove more valuable than formal military training. The next morning, the 12 recruits were loaded onto separate transport vehicles and taken to different drop points across Titan VII's northern hemisphere. Watched through the small window as the facility disappeared behind mountain ridges, leaving her completely alone on an alien world for the first time in her life. Her drop point was a rocky outcropping near what appeared to be an ancient impact crater. The temperature reading on her suit showed -180 degrees Celsius, with wind speeds averaging 40 kilometers per hour. Without her environmental suit, she would die within minutes. The transport pilot handed her a sealed mission packet. "Your objectives are inside. You have 72 hours from the moment I leave to complete them and reach your extraction point." He gestured toward a distant mountain peak barely visible through the swirling ice crystals. "That's your pickup location. Miss it, and the next transport won't be for a week." Shouldered her pack and stepped onto the surface. The transport lifted off immediately, its engine noise fading quickly in the thin atmosphere. She was alone. Opening the mission packet, she found her objectives written on a single sheet of thermal paper. Locate 3 abandoned research stations. Document their current condition with photographs. Collect any remaining data storage devices, and proceed to extraction point Charlie by 1400 hours on day 3. The locations were marked on a basic topographical map, but without GPS or satellite navigation, she would need to navigate by landmarks and dead reckoning. The 3 stations formed a triangle roughly 20 kilometers across, with the extraction point another 15 kilometers beyond the furthest station. Oriented herself using the distant mountain peaks and began moving toward the nearest station. The gravity on Titan VII was slightly higher than Earth standard, making each step require more effort than she was accustomed to. The environmental suit's heating system worked continuously, drawing power from the battery pack that would need to last the entire 72-hour period. The first research station appeared after 6 hours of steady travel. It had been abandoned for years, its structures partially buried by ice accumulation. Documented the exterior damage with her suit's camera, then worked her way inside through an airlock that had been left open. The interior was a frozen wasteland. Equipment that had once cost millions of credits was now covered in ice crystals and completely inoperative. Methodically searched through each room, looking for data storage devices that might have survived the harsh conditions. In what appeared to have been the main laboratory, she found a sealed storage container that had maintained its environmental integrity. Inside were several data crystals and hard drives that appeared undamaged. She packed them carefully in her thermal protective case and continued her search. By the time she finished documenting the first station, night was falling. Temperatures would drop even further, and traveling in the dark would be extremely dangerous. Found a small storage room that offered protection from the wind and set up her emergency shelter. The shelter was little more than a reflective tarp that could trap body heat, but it was better than nothing. Rationed her food carefully, eating just enough to maintain energy while conserving supplies for the remaining 2 days. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by the constant sounds of ice and metal expanding and contracting in the extreme cold. Dawn brought no warmth, but at least visibility improved enough for safe travel. Packed her gear and continued toward the second research station, another 8 kilometers across broken terrain. The landscape was alien and beautiful, massive ice formations created by geological processes that didn't exist on Earth, valleys carved by methane rivers that had frozen solid ago. The second station proved more challenging to reach. It was built on a plateau that required careful climbing to access safely. His mining experience proved valuable here, as she understood how to read ice and rock formations for safe handholds and stable surfaces. This station had been damaged by what appeared to be a seismic event. Half the structure had collapsed, and the rest showed significant structural damage. Documented everything thoroughly, then began the dangerous process of searching through the debris for salvageable data storage. She found 2 more data crystals and what appeared to be a backup drive from the station's main computer system. More importantly, she discovered research logs that might contain valuable information about why the stations had been abandoned. The third station was the most distant and most difficult to reach. Had to cross a section of terrain that had been shattered by some massive geological event, creating a maze of crevasses and unstable ice formations. Progress was slow and dangerous, with every step requiring careful consideration. When she finally reached the third station, discovered it was still partially operational. Emergency power was running, and several systems remained functional. This was clearly the most important of the 3 sites, and she spent extra time documenting its current status and collecting data. Inside the main computer core, she found evidence that the stations had been abandoned due to increasing seismic activity and atmospheric changes that made long-term habitation impossible. The research teams had left in a hurry, unable to take most of their equipment and data with them. With all 3 objectives completed, faced the final challenge, reaching the extraction point 15 kilometers away across the most difficult terrain yet. She had been moving for nearly 60 hours, her food was almost gone, and her suit's power level was dropping into critical ranges. The journey to extraction point Charlie pushed to her physical limits. She had to navigate around several areas where the ice was too unstable to cross safely, adding hours to her travel time. The suit's heating system began operating intermittently to conserve power, allowing her core temperature to drop dangerously low during power-saving cycles. Reached the extraction point with just 3 hours to spare. She was exhausted, hypothermic, and running on reserves she didn't know she had. When the transport appeared on the horizon, she felt relief that threatened to overwhelm her remaining discipline. Back at the facility, learned that only 8 of the 12 recruits had successfully completed their survival missions. 2 had missed their extraction points due to navigation errors, 1 had suffered equipment failure that forced an emergency rescue, and 1 had simply disappeared, his signal lost during the second night. Outstanding performance, instructor noted as she reviewed mission report. Complete objective completion, excellent documentation, and you collected more data than any other recruit. Your navigation accuracy was particularly impressive. Felt a surge of pride but kept her expression neutral. Thank you, ma'am. Your real training begins tomorrow. Now that we know you can survive in hostile environments, we'll see if you can fight in them. The 8 remaining recruits were introduced to their specialized equipment, rifles capable of precision shooting at ranges exceeding 3 kilometers, scopes with advanced targeting computers, and environmental suits designed for extended operations in any conditions. Spent hours familiarizing herself with each system, noting the differences from her previous experience. The training schedule was relentless. Dawn to midnight sessions covering ballistics, meteorology, target identification, camouflage, infiltration techniques, escape and evasion, and advanced marksmanship. Each subject required mastering complex technical information while maintaining physical conditioning in Titan VII's harsh environment. Discovered that her missing eye, far from being a disadvantage, had forced her to develop compensation techniques that proved superior to normal depth perception in many situations. She learned to use scope reticles and techniques more effectively than recruits who relied on natural binocular vision. In the shooting exercises, this methodical approach began to distinguish her from other recruits who relied more on natural ability and quick reflexes. She took time to analyze each shot, learning from every miss and constantly refining her technique. Interesting style, observed Master Instructor during one of the long-range sessions. He was a legendary sniper who had served in 3 major conflicts. Most shooters your age try to rush their shots. You take time to understand what you're doing. My father taught me that every shot should teach you something, replied, adjusting her scope based on the wind conditions she had observed. Wise father, what did he do? Hunter and guide on Earth before the colonies. He said patience was the most important tool any marksman could develop. Master Instructor made a note in his assessment tablet. Patience is rare among young soldiers. They're usually eager to prove themselves quickly. Lined up her next shot, a target at 2,100 meters in challenging wind conditions. She observed the terrain between her position and the target, noting how wind patterns affected the vegetation and dust. She calculated bullet drop and windage adjustments, then made minor scope corrections based on her observations. The shot struck within 2 centimeters of center mass. Immediately cycled the rifle's action and prepared for the next target without celebrating or showing emotion. Excellent technique, noted. Your follow-through is particularly good. Many shooters lose focus after the shot breaks. As the weeks progressed, found herself consistently ranking in the top 3 performers across all training categories. Her survival skills, developed through years of dangerous mining work, translated directly to military operations. Her patience and analytical approach to marksmanship produced consistently superior results. The other recruits began to take notice. Not the casual dismissal she had experienced during basic training, but genuine professional respect. The other human sought her out during breaks to discuss techniques and share insights from his Special Forces experience. "You're making the rest of us look bad," he said with a grin after achieved a perfect score on a particularly difficult shooting exercise. "How do you stay so calm under pressure?" "Mining accidents teach you to think clearly when things go wrong," replied. "Panic gets people killed in dangerous environments." "Good point. Maybe Earth experience isn't as much of a disadvantage as everyone thinks." The comment proved prophetic during the next major exercise, a simulated combat scenario where recruits had to eliminate multiple targets while under fire from automated defense systems. Most of the alien recruits struggled with the unpredictable nature of the threats, their natural advantages less useful when the environment kept changing rapidly. Approach the exercise systematically, identifying patterns in the automated defenses and finding positions that offered both good fields of fire and protection from counterattack. Her methodical progression through the scenario allowed her to eliminate all targets without taking any hits from the defensive systems. "Outstanding tactical thinking," instructor noted during the debrief. "You identified the pattern in the defense rotation and used it to your advantage rather than trying to overpower the system." The praise felt genuine, not the patronizing encouragement had grown accustomed to. She was being evaluated purely on her performance, without consideration of her species or physical limitations. 6 weeks into the program, received an unexpected visitor. Commander, the same officer who had overseen her marksmanship test during basic training, arrived for what was described as a routine inspection of training progress. After observing several exercises, Commander requested a private meeting within the facility's briefing room. "Your instructors speak very highly of your progress," he began, consulting a tablet with her performance evaluations. "Top marks in nearly every category, exceptional problem-solving ability, and leadership potential that wasn't apparent during basic training." Waited for him to continue, unsure where the conversation was heading. "There's a situation developing that might benefit from your particular skills," continued. "I can't provide details unless you're interested in volunteering for a special assignment." "What kind of assignment, sir?" "The type that could advance your career significantly or end it completely. High risk, high reward, and absolutely voluntary." Considered the offer carefully. Special assignments during training usually meant either exceptional opportunities or extremely dangerous missions that regular units couldn't handle. "I'm interested, sir." Commander activated a privacy field around their table, ensuring their conversation couldn't be overheard or recorded. "There's been a situation on the outer rim colony of 442B. A research facility went dark 3 weeks ago. Initial reconnaissance suggests hostile forces have taken control of the facility and are holding civilian researchers hostage." Listened intently as he continued. "Standard military response would be a full assault, but the facility contains research that cannot be allowed to fall into enemy hands, and the hostages are too valuable to risk in a direct attack. We need someone who can infiltrate the facility, gather intelligence, and eliminate specific targets without alerting the entire enemy force." "A sniper mission." "Exactly. Solo infiltration, long-range elimination of key targets, and extraction with minimal collateral damage. It's precisely the type of mission this training program is designed to prepare specialists for. Felt her pulse quicken. A real combat mission with actual lives depending on her skills. Sir, I'm still 6 weeks away from graduation. Why not use an experienced operator? Commander's expression grew serious. Because this situation requires someone the enemy won't expect. Every trained sniper in the galaxy is known to intelligence services. They'll be watching for experienced operators. They won't be watching for a training recruit who hasn't even graduated yet. The logic was sound, if terrifying. Would be invisible to enemy intelligence specifically because she hadn't established a reputation yet. You have 48 hours to decide, concluded. If you accept, you'll complete specialized briefings and mission-specific training immediately. If you decline, you'll continue normal training with no impact on your evaluation. That evening found herself walking the facility's observation deck, looking out at Titan VII's alien landscape while considering the most important decision of her life. The safe choice was obvious: complete training, graduate with distinction, and begin a normal military career. The dangerous choice offered the possibility of proving herself in actual combat, but also the very real possibility of dying alone on a distant planet, her body never recovered, and her death unrecorded. Thought about her father's advice, spoken years ago during one of their hunting trips. The hardest shots are the ones where you only get one chance. You can't practice for them, you can't prepare for everything that might go wrong, and you can't take them back once you pull the trigger. But sometimes, those are the shots that matter most. She closed her single eye and made her decision. Standing there on the observation deck, looking out at a frozen alien world where she had already proven she could survive and excel, Martinez decided it was time to find out just how far patience, determination, and calculated precision could take her. The briefing room on station was unlike anything had ever seen. Holographic displays showed detailed three-dimensional maps of the target facility, real-time orbital surveillance data, and tactical assessments that updated continuously as new information arrived. She had been transported directly from Titan VII to this staging area, bypassing normal military channels entirely. Commander stood beside a massive display showing the Meridian Research Facility on 442b, a planet that orbited a red dwarf star in what scientists called the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, but perfect for human-like life. The facility itself looked like a small city from orbit, with multiple buildings connected by covered walkways and surrounded by defensive perimeters. The Meridian facility houses the galaxy's most advanced research into quantum communication technology, explained, pointing to various structures on the display. 3 weeks ago, all communication ceased during what appeared to be a routine maintenance cycle. Orbital reconnaissance revealed unauthorized ships in the area and signs of forced entry into several buildings. Studied the aerial images carefully. The facility was surrounded by forest and natural terrain that would provide excellent cover for approach and concealment. However, it was also isolated, meaning extraction would be challenging if things went wrong. Intelligence suggests the attackers are members of the Obsidian Syndicate, continued. They're a criminal organization that specializes in acquiring and selling advanced technology to the highest bidder. We estimate 15 to 20 hostiles currently control the facility, with approximately 40 civilian researchers being held as hostages. A new image appeared showing personnel files of the research staff. Recognized several species, humans, and others whose names she was still learning. All appeared to be civilians with no military training. Your mission has 3 primary objectives, said, the display changing to show tactical overlays. First, conduct reconnaissance to confirm hostile positions and hostage locations. Second, eliminate key targets to disrupt their command structure and reduce their ability to resist rescue operations. Third, establish communications with the hostage groups and prepare them for extraction. Nodded, taking notes on the tactical tablet she had been provided. Sir, what's the timeline for the rescue operation? That depends on your success. A full military response team is standing by, but they can't move until you've neutralized the primary threats and confirmed hostage safety. Move too quickly, and the hostages will be killed. Wait too long, and the syndicate might escape with the research data. The weight of responsibility settled on shoulders. 40 lives, advanced technology that could affect galactic security, and the success or failure of a major military operation, all depending on her ability to remain undetected while eliminating specific targets with surgical precision. Your insertion will be via stealth drop pod during the planet's night cycle, explained. Weather conditions are favorable, cloud cover will mask your approach, and seasonal storms should provide acoustic cover for your activities. You'll have 72 hours to complete all objectives before the rescue team moves in regardless. Study the insertion point on the tactical display. It was located 12 kilometers from the facility in dense forest that would provide excellent concealment. However, she would need to cover that distance while carrying specialized equipment and avoiding any syndicate patrols. Equipment package includes a custom sniper rifle optimized for 442B's atmospheric conditions, advanced reconnaissance gear, and communication systems that can penetrate the facility's shielding, said. You'll also have emergency medical supplies and rations for 5 days, though we expect mission duration to be considerably shorter. The rifle specifications appeared on display, showing a weapon unlike anything she had trained with. It was designed specifically for precision work at extreme range, with advanced ballistic computers and targeting systems that could compensate for atmospheric variations and planetary rotation effects. Sir, what about extraction contingencies? If the mission fails or I'm detected early? His expression grew serious. There are no extraction contingencies. If you're detected or captured, the mission becomes a standard military assault with minimal chances for hostage survival. Success depends entirely on maintaining operational security throughout the mission duration. Absorbed this information without visible reaction. She had understood from the beginning that this was a high-risk assignment, but the reality of having no backup options emphasized just how critical success would be. One final consideration, added, calling up personnel files of the syndicate members believed to be at the facility. These aren't military professionals. They're criminals motivated by profit, not ideology. They're likely to make mistakes under pressure, but they're also unpredictable and may act irrationally if they feel threatened. The criminal profiles showed a mix of species and backgrounds, but all had extensive records of violence and disregard for civilian safety. Noted several individuals marked as high-priority elimination targets the leadership structure that needed to be dismantled to break syndicate control of the facility. After 6 hours of intensive briefing, was transported to the equipment bay where her mission gear was waiting. The sniper rifle was a work of art, precision-engineered components that fit together with mechanical perfection. The scope alone contained more advanced technology than most entire weapon systems. Master Armorer, with specialized knowledge of precision weapons, walked through the rifle's capabilities. Maximum effective range is 3,500 meters under optimal conditions. The targeting computer can account for wind, temperature, humidity, and effect automatically, but you can override any calculation if battlefield conditions require manual adjustment. Familiarized herself with every control and setting, understanding that her life would depend on this weapon's reliability. The ammunition was equally impressive, guided projectiles that could make minor course corrections after firing to ensure target accuracy. The reconnaissance package includes micro-drones for surveillance, passive sensors that can detect movement and heat signatures, and communication gear that can tap into the facility's internal networks without detection, continued, showing each piece of equipment. The gear was more sophisticated than anything had imagined during her training, but the basic principles remained familiar. Observation, patience, and precise action, the same lessons her father had taught her, simply applied with more advanced tools. Spent the remaining time before insertion studying facility blueprints, memorizing the locations of critical systems, and planning approach routes that would minimize exposure while maximizing observation opportunities. She identified 17 potential shooting positions that offered clear lines of sight to key areas while providing concealment and escape routes. The drop pod bay was utilitarian and cold, designed for function rather than comfort. Performed final equipment checks while technicians prepared the insertion vehicle. The pod was little more than a reinforced shell with basic life support and stealth coating designed to avoid detection during atmospheric entry. Weather update shows optimal conditions for insertion, reported the launch coordinator. Storm front moving through the target area will provide excellent cover for your approach and mask any acoustic signatures from the drop. Secured her equipment in the pod's storage compartments and settled into the acceleration couch. Through the small viewport, she could see 442B rotating slowly below, a blue-green world that looked remarkably similar to Earth despite being dozens of light-years away. "Launch in 30 seconds, announced the coordinator. "Remember, once you're on the ground, you're completely autonomous. No communication with base unless specifically authorized in your mission parameters." Closed her single eye and focused on controlling her breathing and heart rate. In a few minutes, she would be alone on an alien world, responsible for a mission that could affect galactic security. The magnitude of the responsibility was overwhelming if she let herself think about it directly. Instead, she focused on the immediate tasks: survive atmospheric entry, locate the target facility, establish observation positions, and begin reconnaissance. Everything else could wait until she had current intelligence about the tactical situation. The drop pod separated from its launch vehicle with a gentle push that quickly became violent deceleration as it hit the planet's atmosphere. Gritted her teeth and endured the bone-rattling descent. Trusting in technology, she barely understood to deliver her safely to the surface. The landing was harder than expected, the pod's impact dampeners struggling with the soft forest floor that absorbed less shock than anticipated. Waited several minutes after touchdown before opening the pod's hatch, listening for any sounds that might indicate her arrival had been detected. 442B's atmosphere was thick and humid, filled with the sounds of alien wildlife and the distant rumble of the storm system that had covered her approach. Quickly unpacked her equipment and camouflaged the drop pod with natural materials before beginning her movement toward the target facility. The forest was unlike anything on Earth, trees that reached impossible heights with bark that glowed softly in the dim light from the red dwarf star. The undergrowth was dense but manageable, providing excellent cover while allowing relatively easy movement for someone willing to move slowly and carefully. Its mining experience proved invaluable as she navigated the unfamiliar terrain. She tested each footstep carefully, avoided areas where the ground might be unstable, and chose routes that minimized her impact on the environment. Leaving any trace of her passage could compromise the entire mission. After 4 hours of careful movement, reached her first planned observation position, a rocky outcropping that overlooked the facility from approximately 2,800 meters distance. She established a concealed position among the natural rock formations and deployed her surveillance equipment. Through the advanced scope, the Meridian Research Facility appeared much larger and more complex than the briefing materials had indicated. Could see movement around several buildings, with what appeared to be sentries posted at regular intervals. The Syndicate had established professional-looking defensive positions, suggesting they were more organized than intelligence estimates had predicted. Spent 6 hours conducting detailed surveillance, mapping guard rotations, identifying communication patterns, and locating what appeared to be the main command post. She observed 12 distinct individuals during this period, noting their positions, movement patterns, and apparent roles in the facility's security. Her patience was rewarded when she identified the first high-priority target, a male who appeared to be directing guard rotations and was consistently treated with deference by other Syndicate members. According to her briefing materials, this was likely Vex, the Syndicate's tactical coordinator for this operation. Established range and environmental conditions for a potential shot. At 2,800 meters, it would be at the extreme edge of her rifle's effective range, but atmospheric conditions were favorable and wind patterns were predictable. She calculated firing solutions for multiple scenarios, preparing for various opportunities that might arise. As night fell on 442B, observed lights coming on throughout the facility. The pattern of illumination revealed which buildings were currently occupied and suggested where hostages might be held. She noted 3 buildings that showed signs of restricted access, likely locations for the civilian prisoners. Movement around the facility decreased significantly after dark, with only 4 sentries maintaining visible patrols. Identified an opportunity to move closer to the facility during the night cycle, potentially establishing a secondary position that would offer better targeting angles. She carefully packed her equipment and began moving toward an observation position she had identified earlier, a cluster of large trees approximately 1,200 meters from the facility's main entrance. The movement required crossing two open areas where she would be exposed to detection, but the darkness and storm conditions provided adequate cover. The second position offered dramatically better observation capabilities, could see into the facility's courtyard and through windows of several buildings. More importantly, she could observe the main entrance where high-priority targets would be most likely to appear during normal operations. From this position, identified two more high-priority targets during the early morning hours. The first was a human female who appeared to be coordinating communications, likely Syndicate Operations Commander Sarah according to her intelligence briefings. The second was a male whose advanced equipment and central role in planning sessions marked him as the technical specialist responsible for extracting the facility's research data. Now faced the critical decision of target priority and timing. Eliminating the wrong target first could alert the entire facility and result in hostage executions. However, waiting too long might allow the syndicate to complete their data extraction and prepare for evacuation. She decided to begin with the tactical coordinator, Vex. His elimination would disrupt the syndicate's security operations and create confusion that could mask follow-up shots. The operations commander and technical specialist would be secondary targets, eliminated during the chaos following the first shot. Prepared her rifle carefully, double-checking every setting and calculation. At this range, environmental factors were critical: wind speed and direction, temperature variations, humidity levels, and even the planet's rotation would affect bullet trajectory. The targeting computer provided recommendations, but trusted her own calculations based on careful observation of conditions. She established a stable firing position using natural terrain features and artificial support from her equipment. Her breathing settled into the controlled rhythm she had practiced thousands of times during training. Her single eye focused through the scope, acquiring the target and waiting for the optimal moment to take the shot. Vex appeared in her scope's field of view at 8:47 local time, moving across the courtyard toward what appeared to be a communications station. Tracked him smoothly, calculating the lead angle required for a moving target at extreme range. The paused at the communications station, presenting a clear shot opportunity. Controlled her breathing, relaxed her muscles, and began applying pressure to the trigger with the smooth, steady squeeze her father had taught her years ago. "Target locked," she whispered to herself, the same words that would become her signature in the years to come. The rifle fired with a muffled crack that was immediately swallowed by the storm sounds. Watched through the scope as the projectile covered the 2,800 meters in slightly under 4 seconds, striking Vex center mass and dropping him instantly. Immediate confusion erupted around the facility as syndicate members struggled to understand what had happened. Was already acquiring her second target, the operations commander who had emerged from a building to investigate the disturbance. Sarah presented a more challenging shot, moving rapidly and seeking cover as she realized they were under attack. Led the target carefully, accounting for the woman's evasive movement pattern and the changed atmospheric conditions. The second shot struck home just as reached what she thought was protective cover. Immediately shifted her aim toward the technical building where her final priority target was most likely located. By now, the facility was in full alert status. Syndicate members were taking defensive positions and attempting to locate the source of the incoming fire. Had perhaps minutes before return fire made her current position untenable. The technical specialist appeared briefly at a window, apparently trying to assess the tactical situation. His third shot shattered the window and eliminated the target, completing her primary mission objectives in less than 5 minutes. Immediate withdrawal was now essential. Packed her equipment rapidly and began moving toward her prepared escape route. Behind her, the Meridian Research Facility was in chaos, with the remaining syndicate members struggling to maintain control without their key leadership. As she moved through the forest toward her secondary observation position, activated her communication gear and transmitted the coded message that would initiate the rescue operation. Viper actual to base. Package delivered. Initiating Phase 2. The response came immediately. Copy Viper actual. Cavalry is en route. Maintain overwatch and provide target updates as required. settled into her new position and established observation of the facility. The syndicate's remaining members were clearly struggling without their leadership structure. Several appeared to be arguing about their next course of action, while others were attempting to establish communication with their external support. Over the next 6 hours, provided real-time intelligence as the rescue team approached. She identified remaining hostile positions, confirmed locations of hostage groups, and eliminated 3 additional targets who posed direct threats to civilian safety during the extraction operation. When the rescue team finally arrived, their assault was surgical and precise. With intelligence and ongoing sniper support, they neutralized the remaining syndicate members and secured all hostages within 23 minutes of initial contact. Maintained her overwatch position until the facility was completely secure and all civilians had been evacuated to safety. Only then did she emerge from concealment and make contact with the rescue team commander. "Outstanding work, Martinez," said Colonel, a veteran Draconian who commanded the elite rescue unit. "Your intelligence and target elimination allowed us to achieve complete mission success with 0 civilian casualties." Nodded, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. Her first real combat mission had been a complete success, but the weight of having taken 6 lives in actual combat was something she would need to process over time. "Sir, what about the research data? Was the Syndicate able to extract anything before we stopped them?" "Technical teams are assessing that now, but preliminary reports suggest they were still working on breaking the security protocols when you eliminated their specialist. We may have stopped them just in time." As packed her equipment and prepared for extraction, she reflected on how different this mission had been from anything in her training. The technical challenges had been manageable, but the psychological pressure of knowing that lives depended on her accuracy had been more intense than she had expected. She had proven to herself and to the military hierarchy that humans could excel in precision specialist roles, despite their perceived physical limitations. More importantly, she had discovered something about herself, the calm focus she felt during critical moments, when everything depended on making the right decision under extreme pressure. The extraction shuttle lifted off from 442B as the red dwarf star set behind the mountains. Watched the alien landscape disappear below, knowing that she had crossed a threshold that could never be uncrossed. She was no longer a trainee or a recruit learning theoretical applications of military skills. She was a sniper, a specialist whose unique combination of patience, precision, and tactical thinking had saved 40 lives and prevented advanced technology from falling into criminal hands. As the shuttle entered hyperspace for the journey back to Galactic Defense Force headquarters, closed her single eye and allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, and new opportunities to prove that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest tactical advantage of all. But tonight, Martinez, the one-eyed human they had all mocked during BASIC, the Galactic Defense Force's most secure briefing room, was filled with officers representing every major species in the Alliance. Sat at the conference table, still adjusting to the idea that her successful mission on 442B had elevated her from unknown trainee to someone whose tactical input was actively sought by high command. Admiral, a distinguished whose feathers showed the silver of advanced age, stood before a massive holographic display showing the Outer Rim territories. "The success at Meridian has confirmed our suspicions about Syndicate capabilities. They're not simply opportunistic criminals. They're operating with military-level coordination and advanced intelligence." Studied the star charts, noting the pattern of recent Syndicate activities. 7 facilities had been attacked in the past 6 months, all containing advanced research or strategic resources. The attacks showed escalating sophistication and suggested access to classified military information. "Intelligence believes the Syndicate has established a major base of operations somewhere in the nebula," Admiral continued. "Standard reconnaissance has been unsuccessful due to the nebula's interference with sensors and communication systems. We need someone who can conduct close-range surveillance without depending on technological advantages." General Thane's former instructor from advanced training nodded toward her. Martinez demonstrated exceptional fieldcraft during the Meridian operation. Her ability to maintain operational security while conducting precision elimination suggests she might be suitable for extended reconnaissance in challenging environments. felt the weight of attention from officers whose names appeared in military history texts. She was being considered for another mission that would likely be more dangerous than her first, but also more important to galactic security. The mission profile is unlike anything we've attempted before, Admiral explained, the display shifting to show detailed images of the nebula. Solo insertion into a region where communication is impossible, extended surveillance of suspected syndicate facilities, and elimination of high-value targets if opportunities arise. The nebula appeared on the display as a swirling mass of gas and debris that rendered most forms of technology unreliable. Navigation would require traditional methods, communication would be impossible, and extraction would depend entirely on predetermined schedules and locations. Duration could extend to several weeks depending on what you discover, the Admiral continued. This would be the deepest penetration mission attempted in hostile territory, with complete operational autonomy and minimal support. Consider the implications carefully. Extended time alone in space, operating without backup or communication, depending entirely on her own skills and judgment. It was exactly the type of mission that appealed to her methodical, self-reliant approach to problem-solving. Sir, what intelligence do we have about syndicate presence in the nebula? Very limited, admitted Colonel Sarah, the intelligence officer briefing the mission. Long-range sensors detect artificial structures and energy signatures consistent with major installations, but we can't determine numbers, capabilities, or defensive measures without close reconnaissance. Studied the nebula's characteristics on her tactical tablet. Dense gas clouds that would mask her approach, but also limit visibility. Gravitational anomalies that could affect spacecraft navigation. Electromagnetic interference that would render most sophisticated equipment useless. The mission requires someone who can operate effectively with minimal technological support, Admiral noted. Your performance at Meridian suggests you have the necessary skills for this type of assignment. Appreciated that the Admiral was being direct about the mission's dangers rather than minimizing them. Extended solo operations had broken experienced soldiers who couldn't handle the psychological pressure of complete isolation combined with constant danger. Sir, I'm interested in the assignment. What would be the mission parameters? Colonel activated a more detailed display showing potential insertion points and surveillance objectives. Primary mission is reconnaissance, document syndicate facilities, defensive capabilities, personnel numbers, and operational patterns. Secondary objective is target elimination if opportunities arise that would significantly disrupt their operations. Noted the familiar pattern: observe, analyze, and act when conditions were optimal. The scale was larger than her previous mission, but the fundamental approach remained the same. Insertion would be via modified stealth craft designed to navigate the nebula's gravitational anomalies, continued. You'd establish a base camp in the asteroid field at the nebula's edge and conduct reconnaissance using a specialized scout ship with minimal technological signature. The equipment list was impressive: advanced stealth systems, long-term life support, and reconnaissance gear designed to function in the nebula's interference-heavy environment. More importantly, would have complete discretionary authority to make tactical decisions based on developing situations. Timeline for the mission: open-ended, Admiral replied. You continue until you've gathered sufficient intelligence for a major operation or until you determine that syndicate capabilities require immediate military response. Extraction windows are scheduled every 10 days, but you're authorized to extend the mission if conditions warrant. Felt a familiar surge of anticipation mixed with apprehension. This mission would test every skill she had developed: technical competence, physical conditioning, psychological resilience, and tactical judgment. Success would establish her reputation as an elite specialist. Failure would likely result in her disappearance in an uncharted region of space. I accept the assignment, sir. Admiral nodded approvingly. Excellent. You have 48 hours to complete specialized briefings and equipment familiarization before insertion. This mission has been classified at the highest levels. Operational details are restricted to personnel in this room. The next 2 days passed in intensive preparation. Learned to operate the specialized reconnaissance craft, studied every piece of intelligence about the nebula, and practiced with equipment designed for extended solo operations. The technical challenges were significant, but manageable for someone with her mining and military background. The stealth insertion craft was unlike any vehicle had previously operated. Designed specifically for missions requiring minimal technological signature, it relied on passive systems and manual controls rather than automated navigation and targeting systems. Flying it effectively required constant attention and skilled piloting. Master Pilot, with decades of stealth operations experience, spent hours training on the craft's capabilities and limitations. The nebula will interfere with most guidance systems, so navigation becomes primarily visual and gravitational. You'll need to develop an instinctive feel for how the ship responds in different conditions. Appreciated the challenge of learning to pilot effectively without depending on technological aids. It reminded her of operating mining equipment during system failures, understanding the machine's fundamental characteristics, and working with its natural responses rather than fighting against them. The reconnaissance equipment was equally specialized. Long-range optical systems that could function in the nebula's interference, passive sensors that detected energy signatures without broadcasting their own location, and recording devices that would document everything for later analysis. Spent hours familiarizing herself with each system, understanding not just how to operate the equipment, but how to maintain and repair it during extended deployment. Her mining experience had taught her that equipment failure was often more dangerous than enemy action in hostile environments. Launch day arrived with minimal ceremony. Its mission was classified to the point where only essential personnel knew she was departing. She performed final equipment checks alone, loaded her supplies methodically, and ran through pre-flight procedures with the same careful attention to detail she applied to everything else. The stealth craft separated from its carrier vessel at the edge of explored space, beginning a 3-day journey toward the nebula. Used the transit time to review intelligence materials and plan her initial reconnaissance approach. The mission would begin with establishing a concealed base camp, then conducting systematic surveillance of suspected syndicate locations. Entering the nebula was like flying into a living thing. Swirling gas clouds created constantly changing visibility conditions, while gravitational anomalies from hidden stellar remnants required constant navigation adjustments. Piloting skills were tested immediately as she maneuvered through conditions that would challenge experienced pilots. The asteroid field at the nebula's edge provided numerous options for concealed base camps. Selected a large asteroid with natural caves that could shelter her craft while providing good observation points for monitoring traffic entering and leaving the nebula's interior. Establishing the base camp took 6 hours of careful work. Installed life support systems in the asteroid's caves, camouflaged her craft's position, and set up communication equipment that could transmit burst messages during the scheduled extraction windows. The work was familiar, similar to setting up temporary shelters during mining operations, but with the added complexity of maintaining operational security. From her asteroid base, could observe several shipping lanes that appeared to be heavily used despite the nebula's dangers. Over the first week, she documented 17 different vessels entering or leaving the nebula, all using transponder codes that didn't match any registered civilian or military traffic. The ships varied in size and design, but all showed modifications consistent with military or paramilitary operations. Several carried external weapon pods, others had enhanced shielding systems, and a few showed evidence of stealth technology. This wasn't merchant traffic, it was a military supply line. Reconnaissance craft allowed her to follow several ships deeper into the nebula, though maintaining safe distances required exceptional piloting skills in the constantly changing visibility conditions. The ships all seemed to be heading toward the same general region, a dense cluster of gas clouds approximately 6 days' travel from her base camp. During her second week, discovered the first major syndicate installation, a massive asteroid fortress that had been extensively modified with docking bays, weapons systems, and communication arrays. The facility was clearly a major operations center, with constant traffic of ships arriving and departing. From a concealed observation position, documented the fortress's defenses and operational patterns. She counted at least 40 vessels of various sizes, defensive weapon systems that could repel major military assaults, and evidence of manufacturing facilities that appeared to be producing military equipment. More importantly, she observed personnel transfers that included several individuals from her high-value target list. The fortress wasn't just a logistical center. It was a command facility where major syndicate operations were planned and coordinated. Transmitted her findings during the next communication window, receiving authorization to continue surveillance and gather more detailed intelligence about the facility's capabilities and vulnerabilities. The mission was producing exactly the information military planners needed to develop an effective response to syndicate activities. Over the following weeks, expanded her reconnaissance to cover the entire region. She discovered 2 additional facilities, a manufacturing complex built into a series of connected asteroids, and what appeared to be a training facility where syndicate forces practiced military tactics. The scope of the syndicate's operations was far larger than anyone had suspected. This wasn't a criminal organization. It was a shadow military force with capabilities that rivaled many planetary defense forces. They had established a complete infrastructure for military operations in a region of space that was supposed to be uninhabitable. Detailed documentation revealed the true nature of the threat facing galactic security. The Syndicate had the resources and organization to conduct major military operations against any target in the galaxy. Their location in the nebula made them nearly immune to conventional military response, while their advanced equipment allowed them to strike anywhere and retreat to safety. During her 5th week, observed preparations that suggested a major operation was being planned. Ships were being loaded with specialized equipment, personnel were being concentrated at the main fortress, and communication traffic had increased dramatically. Something significant was about to happen. Positioned herself for detailed observation of the main fortress, using her reconnaissance craft's advanced sensors to penetrate the facility's security as much as possible without revealing her presence. What she discovered changed everything. The Syndicate wasn't just planning another raid on a research facility or commercial installation. They were preparing for a coordinated assault on 3 major military bases simultaneously. The attack would cripple galactic defense force capabilities in an entire sector, leaving dozens of worlds defenseless against follow-up operations. Transmitted an emergency burst communication with her intelligence, knowing that breaking communication protocol might expose her position, but understanding that the information was too critical to wait for the next scheduled contact. The response was immediate: continue surveillance and prepare for possible target elimination missions. As settled in for extended observation, she reflected on how her mission had evolved. What had begun as reconnaissance had become the key intelligence operation that might prevent a major galactic conflict. Her patient observation skills, developed through years of mining work and refined through military training, had uncovered a threat that conventional intelligence methods had missed completely. Looking through her scope at the massive Syndicate fortress, whispered the words that had become her signature: "Target locked." But this time, the target wasn't a single individual. It was an entire enemy infrastructure that needed to be analyzed, understood, and ultimately neutralized before it could threaten the security of every world in the galaxy. Closed her single eye and prepared for what she suspected would be the most challenging phase of her mission yet. The reconnaissance was complete. Now came the difficult part: determining how one soldier with precise skills could make the greatest impact against an enemy force that numbered in the thousands. The emergency communication from Galactic Defense Force Command arrived 18 hours after its intelligence report about the planned Syndicate assault. The message was brief but clear: authorization granted for direct action. Prevent Syndicate offensive by any means necessary. Reinforcements en route but will not arrive for minimum 10 days. Mission success critical to galactic security. Stared at the message display, understanding the full weight of what had just been placed on her shoulders. She was being asked to single-handedly disrupt a military operation involving thousands of enemy personnel and dozens of combat vessels. The logical approach would be to wait for reinforcements, but 10 days would allow the Syndicate to complete their preparations and launch their devastating assault. From her concealed position near the main fortress, could observe the accelerating pace of enemy preparations. Ships were being loaded with assault equipment, personnel were conducting final briefings, and the entire facility hummed with activity that, in the swirling gas clouds of the nebula, surrounded by hostile forces and completely alone, Martinez began planning what would become one of the most audacious solo operations in military history training, was heading home as one of the most successful combat specialists in the galaxy. Tomorrow, she would inform Commander of her decision. Tonight, she would prepare herself for the possibility that her next mission might be her first time since arriving on Mars Station. Martinez allowed herself to believe that she might actually become the soldier she had always known she could be.